Good afternoon to you. Welcome to NLP class. And I'm sure that you had a pleasant week. I'm also sure that you studied the video for last week, Saturday. And I'm sure that you took down some notes. I also placed a link of a video of someone who did a TED Talk. Or was it a TEDx meeting, presentation, where he spoke about conditioning. I'm sure you learned something in that meeting. So today we're going to go on to talk about Milton model in NeuroLinguistic Programming. Milton model in NeuroLinguistic Programming. And if you joined us last week and if you missed it, you can also scroll down the Facebook thing and look out for the Milton model part 1 and learn this very powerful language pattern. So Milton model is a linguistic technique adopted from this fantastic guy called Milton. Milton was that man that Richard Bandler and John Grinder modeled in order to deduce what we today called the Milton model. It's a communication technique. It's a language pattern. It's a way to use words to convince, we use words to persuade people. Actually, the truth is, the first set of persons that Richard Bandler and John Grinder, the founders of NLP, modeled and studied were Virginia Satir and Phil Spales. These two guys were very specific in their approach of therapy. Whenever they had sessions with people, counseling with people, they were very specific. And that's also a very good adaptation. When you speak with people, try to be as specific, as detailed as possible. Try to get them to be as specific, as detailed as possible. Let them give you their details. And by being more specific, you can get to find out what the issue is. So by asking questions, you get down to the root of the matter and you can solve their problem. But again, they found out that Milton went the other route. He did the other thing. It's the reverse of the meta model. What Virginia Satir and Phil Spales were doing is what we call the meta model, or what was later called the precision model. What Milton was doing was the Milton model. He had an approach. He was more ambiguous, was more vague. He was abstract. He wasn't very clear in his conversation. He was very hypnotic in his conversation, and he got a lot of results. He got people to go into trance, like we explained last week, and got them to get the solutions we're looking for, find the answers we're looking for. He believed that the answers of people's questions are in their unconscious. The answers of people's questions are in their subconscious. And all they simply have to do is get into the subconscious, and then you can find the answers. They can find the answers for themselves. Or you can implant or suggest the answers for them. And so we took our time to study Milton model just as much as I said. When you understand Milton model, the reverse of Milton model is meta model. So in very common language, words that are trance-inducing is what we refer to as Milton model. Words that are literally vague is what we refer to as Milton model. When you want to get people to get into trance, get into their unconscious, get into their subconscious, then you use the Milton language pattern. We said last week that language is a translation of mental states into words. It's a translation of mental states into words. So we have sensory data that we've got in our minds, and then we begin to speak those words. However, in speaking those words, in sharing those words to people, in having conversation, in our day-to-day activities, in the marketplace, where we start to speak in the family, among the children, we do 3 things. If you've been following, we said that we delete. So that means that we do not convey all our thoughts in our words. We delete some, we exclude some information. Another thing that we do, that we don't say everything we are supposed to say. All right. Another thing that we do is that we distort. What that means is that inaccuracies, we distort based on our own assumptions. We distort stuff, and so we still do not say everything as we ought to say it. So our mental states, we got all the information, but again, we now have filters. That is the deletion filter, then the distortion filter. And one other filter that we have is that we generalize. That we shift into absolute statement. We say absolute statements, universal statement, universal qualifiers. And in saying that, in speaking that, that means that we are almost going to be abstract, almost going to be ambiguous. We're never really specific. Every person you meet, a customer, a client, a lover, friend, anybody you have a conversation with, a staff, a colleague, when you listen to them carefully, you realize that they are always very often vague. We walk in some kind of trance. We're saying things we don't really want to say. We're not saying all we're supposed to be saying. We're distorting in our conversation. We're deleting information, and we're generalizing. And in helping people, in counseling people, and in helping people, we want to cut through all that fluff, all that abstraction, all that ambiguity. I want to be very precise. We want to get to find out what's really in your mind, what's really going on around you, what's your internal representation, what's going on in your head, what have you been deleting, what have you been distorting, what are you generalizing. And that happens through conversation. And that's why it's important we study Milton model. And that's why it's also important that we study meta model. If you've been following me, as one of the skills that you need to learn to develop, and develop very carefully, is what we call sensory acuity. Sensory acuity means the ability to sense and decode, to sense what people are going through. And people, we know that when it comes to communication, three things are important. First, the body language of a person is very communication. What we technically call in NLP, the physiology of the person. A person's body. So the first thing you're watching out for is a person's physiology, his facial movements, his gestures, his genuflections, his hand movement, his eye movements, all right, the tension on his muscles, whether facial muscles or hand muscles, his coloration, heartbeat, breathing pattern. Those are the body language classification. Those are the things that we look out for, we observe, and people hide the remaining part of the information they're supposed to share in words in their body, so that they don't necessarily have to say stuff. You can look at their body and you can know how they're feeling. We also said that our emotions are literally buried. Our true hidden beliefs and emotions are buried in our bodies. And we also said that it's also very important that you pay attention to the tone. 55% of people's communication comes a whole lot from their body, and then 38% comes from their tone. So a person can say something, and those words that he's saying, the tone of it is what we go for rather than the exact words of it, because we go for tone more than we go for the words. The words, actually, the 7% of what a person says will matter. But even at that, we don't want to play down on words. Words play a major role. And one of these is we're going to look at we're going to look at language structure. We're going to look at wordings, how to use words in conversation. In fact, as a matter of fact, today we're going to take our time to look a little bit at two Milton models, that two language patterns that people use and get the kind of results that they are looking for. All right. So the first thing I want us to quickly highlight, and I think it's quite important, two very important things that people do that people are looking for is, like I said, the reverse, and I've repeated it several because I want you to get it. The reverse of Milton model is meta model. Let me bring it down, and I think I explained it last week. I said that one of the ways to get into trance, to tell stories, to be ambiguous, to use metaphors, to use quotes, to say breathing statements, to use universal qualifiers, to just say things without very ambiguous terms like food for all, we will make it, all is well. All of those words are Milton model. They cannot be substantiated. They're just words for word's sake, and they give people hope, and they can put people in despair. They are allegations. I mean, a whole lot. But we're going to go into something particularly today that will help you to become a lot more persuasive, and it's a technique in NeuroLinguistic Programming that will help you to become a lot more persuasive. The first one I want to introduce to you, and I want you to take note of it, is what we call embedded commands. Embedded commands. So very often, without us knowing, we embed commands in our conversations. And people who are expert communicators also embed commands. You know, that is, you make a statement, and in that statement there is a command. You know, people don't know that in the statement you make, there is a command. Let me give you an example. Let me think of something that you can relate with. I have 20,000 naira. You will take it. I have 20,000 naira. You will take it. The embedded command in that conversation is you will take it. And it's a hidden instruction in sentences that is commanding. I met Johnson the other day. He's a fantastic guy. So you're giving an instruction, you're giving a command that he's a fantastic guy. Is your command, and you're embedding the command, or you're telling people, look, that is a statement of fact. He's a fantastic guy. There are many examples, and we use it without us knowing. What I'm doing basically is just putting labels where there's a command in a conversation, like you will. And sometimes it can be. Sometimes you can also make a statement and put a command, or you can ask a question. We are going to have a wonderful time, aren't we? We're going to have a wonderful time, aren't we? We are going to have a wonderful time. That is a command. And these commands are usually very subtle. So you can put a command, you can embed a sentence, you can embed it in an entire lengthy conversation. You can put it in, you can, like I'm just doing now, you can put a command. You can put a command in conversation so that people will listen, and without them knowing consciously, instruction is sent to your subconscious. That's one of the things we say. So embedded command is very powerful. You can put in a statement. You can also put it in a question, and there are many, very many examples you can use to get this kind of results. So learn to add commands. Learn to add commands in your conversations without necessarily meaning very demanding. That is, how do I put it? This is how to put it. So you say certain things, and inside those things you're saying, you insert a command. Inside that conversation, you insert a command. Like if you're having a conversation with your children, and then you want them to do something, you can tell them, like, you know, we're having a wonderful time together at home, and you tell children, so how you guys having fun? Are you guys having fun? So you guys you'll be respectful, won't you? You will be respectful, won't you? So your other you will be respectful is the embedded command in that conversation. So embedded commands can be inserted in a statement, can also be inserted in a question. We can take this whole thing, and they're very related to the next thing I want us to discuss today, and that's what we call tag questions. TAGQUESTION, tag questions. Now, tag questions are very similar. It's just that they enable you to become more agreeable. Now, this one I want you to take note of when it comes to persuading people, when it comes to influencing people, when it comes to getting people to your line of thinking. Persuasion is in degrees. That is, before a person gets fully persuaded, he gets persuaded in measures. He starts agreeing with you. The more yes you get from a person, all of those yeses, quote, piles up into the ultimate yes. So your job as a communicator is to get them to give as many yes as possible. If you attended one of our classes where we talked about persuasion in public speaking, and we said that there was something about consistency. We talked about consistency as part of a way to persuade people, getting people to give you a commitment, a little commitment, a nod, a yes, an affirmation, and then by getting many yeses, you can eventually get the ultimate yes you're looking for. So that's what a tag question does. It wants to make you agreeable. And so you use words like aren't you, wouldn't you, isn't it, will you. All right, let me give you an example. So you are paying attention to what I'm saying, aren't you? That's a multimodal language pattern. First, I've used an embedded command. You are paying attention to what I'm talking about, and then I've added a tag question. Aren't you? He's a fantastic guy, isn't he? He's a fantastic guy, isn't he? He's a great cook, isn't he? You'll join us to the club, won't you? You will join us to the club. In fact, I've added an embedded command, and then I'm also using a tag question. Won't you? Aren't you? Haven't you? So using a tag question, questions after a statement, that's what a tag question is, question after a statement, enables people to be more agreeable. Using a question after a statement enables the person that is listening to you to become a lot more agreeable, and that makes you a lot persuasive. That's what makes you the persuader you are. And so Eric C. Milton, of blessed memory, used to use a lot of this kind of language patterns, and his language patterns were categorized. We started talking about loss performative. We talked about complex equivalence. I don't know if you discussed that. Presuppositions, universal qualifiers. Modal operators, embedded questions, normalizations, and so on, and unspecified verbs. Now, I have these materials in a soft copy, and if you will listen to this video and send me your email, I will send that information directly to your email so you can study the various multimodal language pattern. You can study it and understudy it and get to, although we're still going to look at each of them and help you see how it's applicable in your life. So the assignment I'm going to give to you today in this class is to get you to start being more abstract in your conversations. Remember, in the hierarchy of ideas, we say that the man who is a lot more abstract or who is ambiguous is a man who is a leader. Because the leader is always talking in big pictures. You're talking in stories, you're telling stories, you're painting pictures, you're describing the future, you're optimistic, you're using vague statements. We're going to make it, there's a bright future, the company is moving forward, our family is making progress. You're always making vague statements. That language pattern is a Milton pattern. You're telling stories, you're always gisting, you're always having examples, anecdotes to share, humor. All of that is, and that's people who are leaders always paint big pictures. Then in the level of abstraction, they are higher because they are leaders. Now, so I want to start becoming more abstract, becoming more hopeful, becoming more optimistic, having conversations that you don't go into specific details with them. You're always storytelling, you're always embedding, and you can also start embedding the points. Now, without necessarily telling people what exactly to do, you can embed a command, you can embed suggestions, you can embed instructions in your stories, in your conversation. That's what makes it great. So start telling a lot more stories. Start weaving the information you want to share inside a story. All right, so telling stories. That's how to make a good salesperson. Because a lot of times, people may not pay attention to your pitch, but they'll pay attention to your story. They won't forget a story well told. So learn how to tell good stories. I'm going to be showing you how to tell stories soon, but learn how to tell good stories. So that's what I want you to do. Become more abstract in your conversations as you go about today. The next thing I want, as an assignment I want you to do, is that I want you to start using embedded commands. Impute commands in your conversation without necessarily being commanding. Now, to do that, be careful about your tone. In order for you to not allow the recipient know that it's a direct command, soften your tone as you made up in that conversation. In other words, if you're going to say something very striking that is strong, if you're going to do something that is very strong, a command, so you garnish it with certain words, and the tone is low. Your tone is low deliberately because you don't want the conscious mind to pick the tone of a command. You want it to seep through the conscious mind into the subconscious, so the subconscious can now realize that, wow, this is an instruction, this is a command. So become more careful about your tone. So you tone down literally that tone of commands, but that's how to easily embed your commands. Then when it comes to tag questions, I want to start using tag questions. Every time you have a conversation, you say, wow, we had a wonderful time, didn't we? Most people will say, yes, we had a great lecture, haven't we? All right? You will practice what I've told you to practice, won't you? And I've done an embedded command, and I've added a tag question, and that is very fantastic. So in life coaching and in therapy, when you're having conversations with people, you can start using a lot of this. Now, one of the things you notice about embedded commands and tag questions, okay, or especially embedded commands, is that they are more effective when they are present tense. One beautiful thing about the Milton model was that Erickson Milton used present tense conversations. When you use present tense conversations, people usually go into trance. There's something we call utilization in NLP, where you use what a person is really going through right now to get into trance. Like you have a person sitting down, you want to put him into hypnotic trance. You usually say, so you're seated down and looking at me right now, and you know in your heart that the information I'm sharing with you is a very important information. And you're looking at me and your eyes are blinking, and as they are blinking, they are becoming very heavy, and as you focus on my eyes, they're becoming quite heavy, and you know that this information is going straight into your subconscious because this information is valuable to you, aren't they? And you know that is so. So you're relaxing as you're listening, and you're closing your eyes as we speak. So that is the kind of conversation that Erickson Milton had with his people. And usually, for those of you who do hypnosis, that's the kind of conversation that people, especially clinical hypnosis, therapeutic hypnosis, that's the kind of conversation that people use to get people into trance. Now, I want to be very careful with this information because you've got to be careful. This information is dangerous. When you're, so utilization, like I said, utilization is actually picking what they're already doing and using it, making them aware that they are doing it. For example, they are sitting. Yes, they are aware that they are sitting. They are sitting. They are aware they are sitting. They are breathing. They are breathing deeply. They're not suddenly conscious of that breathing deeply. So you're using that to give them that information, and by doing that, you put them to trance. So using embedded commands, using utilizing what people have as conversation, using tag questions are one of the very powerful ways to do therapeutic counseling, to do even self-hypnosis yourself, to do life coaching on people who you want to help come out of trance. We're going to be doing or put them into trance so they can find out, they can explore in their minds, and they can come out of whatever situation, they can find the resources. Because in NLP, one of the presuppositions is that everybody has everything he has or he needs to solve his problem. So what we're going to do is, I'll be showing you a lot in this class. We'll move on to future pacing in the future. We'll also move on to parts integration of NLP, which you don't want to miss. So, but let's stop there today. I hope you got value. So all you simply have to do is just watch this video again and watch all the videos I've been sharing. We started talking about several terms, so watch the videos again, watch this video carefully, but the more you listen, the better you understand the stuff, and find a way to practicalize or to put into practice what we've shared. So I've given you assignments. Start telling a lot of stories, start becoming more ambiguous, and watch people. You know, we said one of the ways you must have sensory acuity, start watching people's physiological movements, start looking at their eye movements, start looking at their body movements, start listening to their words, start observing for deletion, become more observant, start calibrating, measuring people, whether they are moving into trance or whether they're not moving into trance. Start being more observant of people. That's one thing you want to do. As you tell stories, engaging this, observe people some more. That's one thing you want to do this week. And then also, I want to start embedding commands. Now, start embedding commands in your conversations. Embedding commands. Lower the tone so that people don't quickly notice that it's a command. And then next thing I also want you to do that's important is that I want you to also make sure that you start questions. Won't you? Haven't you? Isn't it? And all that. I hope you got value today. So God bless you. See you again some other time. Okay, so don't forget to send me your mail. Write down your mail. Write down your mail. Someone in the comment section, and then I will send you one of my mentors' breakdown of all the Milton model patterns. God bless you, and see you again.